Um, Most recently was, let me show you this here. This is a series that I did. Yeah. It's called Memory Trajectories, and it's about my dad, who just died last week, and he had Alzheimer's. And having Alzheimer's is just the worst thing in the world. I mean, my husband and I started talking about, what tall building can we jump off of if we get this diagnosis? Or, I told him, okay, when this happens to me, you leave the door unlocked so I can wander off, that's it. It's just the most horrible thing to happen to people. And I took care of him a lot. I became obsessed with my brain. And it showed up in the artwork. This actually is my dad and me, taken out of a family portrait. I used a lot of text from medical textbooks, a lot of older ones, that just talk about a lot of different medical conditions, but Alzheimer's, dementia, that sort of thing, to go along with it. So this is the most recent, and that's the things, that, again, this is just this huge autobiographical thing, which seems kind of selfish to me, but that's what I'm experiencing. And that's what I'm going through right now. Like I said, he just died last week from this, and it just consumed me, because it's just a huge thing, and I just think about it all the time. It's like, is it going to happen to me? And just like, so these brain images just kept coming into my work, and I made a whole series out of it, because it just, these brain things. I actually do volunteer for Alzheimer's research. I let them shoot things into my brains and take pictures of it and stuff. Anything that could help. So that's that's the most recent. But this is how I tell my story. This is how I tell people what's going on with me. A lot of people didn't. I don't necessarily give a statement that says, look, Annie's feeling sorry for herself. It's more like, here's the work, it's up on the wall, and a lot of times what I do is I make something, put it up on the wall, and then it's just, I feel better. I'm presenting it to you. I'm no longer carrying it on me. Here you go. This is the most serious I've been, seriously. So I'm not normally, I don't normally go there. I mean, this series before that was about my Theas. It's called the Thea series. And it has stories in them about these particular Theas that have passed on. And they are pretty serious stories, because, this is Thea Flory. This is my dad's aunt, and she ran away. She was married to my dad's uncle. She ran away with this guy who was distantly related to her husband's family, and they ended up in a truck accident. He was hauling hay or something somewhere to California, and they rolled over, and the truck caught on fire, and some guy who just happened to live nearby saw what was going on. He tried to rescue them from the vehicle, and he ended up dying himself. And this was a guy with a lot of kids. It was just a sad, sad story, because like but my Theas were like, these were really interesting lives, and so it's kind of like the way that they affected me, or how they, how their lives were. These are stories that her story was one that I grew up listening to, or hearing little whispers about, that sort of thing. I did a whole series about my father, who was raised by his grandparents. His mother died when he was 2 years old. He never knew his father. And there were people in the family, or not really in the family, people outside of the family, friends who knew all this information, but they wouldn't tell him who his real father was. And he didn't actually meet his own dad until he was like in his 40s, which was really the greatest thing, because it really started me thinking about stories. I was just a kid, pretty young, maybe preteen, but in that family, my dad, there's no denying it, my dad looked exactly like his dad. It's like, even though the wife was denying it, but they looked exactly like, they had the same mannerisms and everything. It was just eerie. But there was a brother that looked just like my brother, There was one kid that looked like me. It was so odd. It was just, it was, you know, it was really nice to experience that. But we never saw them again. My dad did see his brothers, half-brothers, a couple of times throughout the years, but, you know, just never really got to know that side of the family. So that, to me, it's just more fuel for the artwork. So I'm always doing things like that, finding the stories in my own life and working on them.
I just want to tell you, I thank you so much for trusting us right now and telling us about your father last week, and I honor him and his memory, and I think it's incredibly special that we brought that into this moment. Two people that you just met, that you're sharing that with us. If it's okay with you, I'm interested in that moment of the portrait on that the first work that you showed us. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about that moment with your father?
I remember as a child, we didn't go to portrait studios. The portrait studios came to us. There would be a photographer with a screen that he would set up in our living room, and we'd all be dressed and sat in front of this little screen. And this was one of those portraits. And there were 5 kids in our family. I think there were only 4 in this one. It was before my younger sister was born. There's very few pictures that I have of my dad holding me. After the first one, after my oldest brother was born, the rest of us came every 2 years. So there was always a baby there, you know. And so my holding time didn't get to be very long. And so here, my brother was a baby and my mother was holding him in the portrait. So, you know, here I got to sit on my dad's lap. So, you know, that's what happens when you got like a lot of kids. And you know, so going through family pictures, and just, you know, when I found this one and I was able to cut it out of there, and just like, I knew this is the one that I had to have this, because it's like, I'm hoping that I share his genes. I'm hoping I don't share that particular Alzheimer's gene with him, but we were a lot alike. I look like him. We're both stubborn, and he never liked to go to the doctor in the same way, and you know, I know I'm a lot like him, and so that this piece just meant a lot to me, because we're in it together.
When you're working on a project or a specific work of art or a series, I mean, it's something especially personal like this, do you have like a specific audience in mind that you're knowing is going to be the works, or hoping will, or are you just making that?
I make it, and I don't really care. I try not to too often to be in the theme shows, because a lot of times it's, you know, it's not, nothing of me goes into it. I'm meeting someone else's criteria. I'm meeting someone else's theme instead of my own. And but I do them. You know, I do them for friends to say I'm doing a show. You know, can you do something? You know, and I'm problem with that. I've always felt that the best artwork is the one where you could look at it and you're seeing something of the artist in it. You know, I'm not just making a pretty picture. And a lot of times I have people saying, well, why would anyone want to buy that? It's so personal. It's like, but I've had a lot of people too say, I went through the same thing, or my mother told me the same thing when I was putting quotes on the work, you know, or that sort of thing. It's like, you know, you never know who you might come across. When I had this show up, this show was, I just took down at the end of last month. People didn't know that this was about Alzheimer's, didn't know that that's what my father was going through. But people were coming to me saying, oh, I really like this, you know, I'm taking care of my mother right now. You know, and I kept hearing that from people. And that's what I like about it, is that I don't necessarily leave a statement for people, because I want them to bring into it what they may have going on in their own lives. You know, I think that's really important. I like to look at work and just say, oh, I know what you're thinking about. You know, I want to know something about that artist just from looking at the work, rather than reading a statement that's tacked up on the wall that's, you know, forced out of you that, you may have to do and you may not want to do. But it was just amazing that people who are actually taking care of Alzheimer's, people that they knew with Alzheimer's, that saw the show, that came up and told me about it, and I hadn't said, hey, guess what? So it was really nice, and I was able to give them a bit of advice and say, this is what you're going to have to do, and this is how you're going to have to help that person. Because one person was early on in it, and she was incredibly frustrated with her friend. And, and I just, what can I do? I gave her a hug and said, it's going to get even worse, but here's who you contact, and here's who, you need to rely on other people. And I was really lucky because I have somebody who I can rely on who's also going through the same thing. And, it's really nice to have somebody that you can, that knows what you're doing, that knows what's going on.
So, you mentioned that you don't usually do theme shows.
Well, I know.
No. So I'm wondering, since you did decide to participate in the Border Project, and it seems that most of your work is personal, and you like to have that personal connection and have the audience have a personal connection with the artist. I'm wondering, how do you see that in terms of the Border Project? What do you see as being specifically personal in your works of art, and how do you feel you're going to be able, or you will be making this connection?
Yeah, well, I kind of feel like I do fit the theme. Ethnically, I do, and I always, with a show like this, I always feel like you're going to get an extreme. The people that are saying, that are on one side, you're going to get, you may not get the other side. I'm kind of like right here, I'm somebody who was born here. My father was born here, and his mother was born here. His grandmother was, it goes really far back here. So I see it from a different viewpoint, and I appreciate the fact that you guys would allow me to make my statement, as well as those people, who may be over here, and these people who may be over here. I just think that's important that if it's. So I do theme shows in that sense that, if I'm fitting into that theme, and I think that I do, because my world has changed quite a bit. I used to be unique. I really was. In grade school, I was, there were very few brown people around me, and the teachers would ask me, what does your family eat for Thanksgiving? Things like that. And when we had science lessons, I was the one who had to go up and show everybody my skin for we're talking about pigmentation. But now that's how unique I was, and now it's like I'm just one in many, and it's just become a strange world. Like companies that I've dealt with for years, decades, and all of a sudden they're sending me my mail in Spanish. It's like, what? Help me, I don't know what this says. So, and I called them and they said, oh, well, we just assumed because you live in this zip code, and, it's like, really? So that's how I'm experiencing it, and I appreciate the opportunity to, to make my statement from where I'm at. Because, it's like, because it's a different viewpoint, it's like I've seen it from right here. And other people are experiencing it in their own ways, and I believe that's what art should be. Everyone's giving their own opinion. I may not agree with it, but it's like, hey, you get to say it. I think that's really nice. And, so hopefully I do fit in that theme.
So you live here.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
Yay, Arizona.